Like, what's it like to be in the middle of a war? What's it like to be in the middle of a fire? What's it like to be in the middle of marriage problems and not be successful yet? Some people need to know, like, hey, I'm in the middle of it too, and I don't have it all figured out, and I'm just here with you.
Just remember, like, we didn't call you and ask you to come work here.
100%.
No one did. You chose, and not only did you choose, but you prepared, hopefully, and you trained, and you did the physical agility. You passed a written test. You went and did a background. Like you jumped through hoops, and some of them are kind of dumb. Like some of the hoops you jumped through were dumb, and you did that willingly to come and work here. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Tailboard Misfits podcast with host. I'm John Velez. Today, we have the pleasure of having Lieutenant Joshua Chase with us. Josh Chase is a fire lieutenant with Norfolk Fire Rescue and is an 18-year veteran of the fire service. He has a passion for leadership and strengthening firefighters to lead at every level. He's authored multiple books, with his most recognized book being Jump Seat Leadership, The Guide to Informal Leadership in the Fire Service. In his most recent book, Engage the Enemy, Fight for Your Purpose, Josh specifically writes to men who are struggling with fighting for their purpose. Aside from the fire service's leadership abilities were developed and tested while he served as a sergeant in the United States Army. Josh served as a crew chief and door gunner for Black Hawk helicopters in Western Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom. During his military career, he was awarded multiple medals for his service, to include the Army Air Medal for meritorious service during aerial combat operations. Josh is the husband of an awesome wife and a father to 3 amazing kids. Through his military service, fire service career, and life experiences, he hopes to strengthen, encourage, and empower others to discover and live out their purpose. Josh, man, it's a pleasure to have you on here. I saw your scrap a couple weeks ago with Chief Corley Moore, and I was very, very impressed, and it had me fired up. And I was talking with him last night on the scrap, or in the little vigilante group chat afterwards, and I told him, like, I don't know how he does it, because the worst part for me, I'm a talker, is sitting here listening to passionate guys and just being able to shut up and listen. So yeah. I'm excited to have you here, man.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's funny. That episode caused a lot of buzz, which is a good thing. I mean,
yeah.
It's cool because a lot of the podcasts I go on, this is going to be the same thing. It's just guys talking shop, real similar, no matter what rank, where they're from, what department, how old. Like, it's always guys talking shop, getting each other fired up. And I think that was a cool thing about Corley's show. Mm-hmm. Man, I love like the live feel of it. Like, they're hitting you with questions. You got to answer them on the spot. Guys are popping in that that you haven't heard from, and you're like, where the hell has this guy been? And he hits you with a crazy question out of left field. Yeah, man, that show is a lot of fun. It got a lot of attention. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, he has something special with the live audience.
Oh yeah.
That's all it's full of, is a bunch of just plugged in, passionate dudes. So it's pretty great. I try to watch as many of them as I can. So first thing I wanted to talk about, and it's more of a selfish talk for me,
sure,
is riding. And realistically, I had this conversation with my battalion chief just the other day. For me, riding comes whenever I just have all this information stuck in my head. And it's something that I'm almost like obsessive over with. And the only way that I know how to get it out of my head is to put it on paper. And so, like, I've written a few, what I would call very loosely, articles, but it's just more or less getting information out of my head. And I haven't always been that way. So I was just curious, like, how did you get your start with writing and being an author?
Yeah, so I started writing probably 10 to 15 years ago, and I've been writing my whole life. I mean, even I found a second grade journal, long from like a box that had like, water stains on it and all kinds of stuff. And it had like stories that I just made up and written in my journal for school. And so I've been writing, honestly, probably since I was like 6 or 7 years old, just random things, like things popped in my head. I'd write them down. If you gave me a prompt, I would write about it. And then on and off through the years, I would write short stories just as, to pass time. Like you said, they're just stuff in my head. And then as I got older and I started actually going through stuff, just like, normal stuff, marriage problems or deployment or mental health, like whatever, it was a way to just get things out on paper, like out of my brain, like you just said. And then I started realizing, well, I'm probably not the only one going through some of this stuff. And either, a lot of people like to write from positions of like victory, like, look what I did. And I was like, but that's not everybody's journey either. Like, what's it like to be in the middle of a war? What's it like to be in the middle of a fire? What's it like to be in the middle of marriage problems and not be successful yet? Some people need to know, like, hey, I'm in the middle of it too, and I don't have it all figured out, and I'm just here with you. And I think that's really kind of how my style adapted and took off into more like a narrative this is my life. I've done a lot of dumb things. I'm not through them all yet. I'm not perfect, but if I can meet you where you're at and relate to you, maybe I can help you, and maybe you don't have to do the same kind of things that I did. So writing for me, just kind of like you said, it's really a release. I'll have thoughts popping up in my head, and I'm like, I can't be the only one that feels this way. So I'll write it down, put it out. Next thing I know, I start getting messages back, and I'm like, okay, cool. It resonates with people. And I don't write I don't write for validation. I write more like I'm just writing to write. If it reaches somebody, awesome. I mean, if it doesn't, that's okay. It was maybe meant to reach one person, or that person didn't get back to me. But it's funny, like you said, that's a selfish question. But for me, like writing's almost selfish because really I'm writing for me to get this stuff out so I can like move on to the next thing. Like if I write a book, it's like those were all my feelings about that one topic. And I'm like, I jammed them all in a book and I'm like, okay, cool. Now I can move on because it's all out of my brain. Now there's space.
Right.
So it's over there on the shelf. It's in a book. People can get it. I can move on to the next thing. So yeah, I've been writing for a little while. I learned how to pretty much do it all myself now. So guys are like, oh, how do you publish? And I learned how to do it all myself. It took me a long time. Fire department, you got time. And
Right.
so it's a lot easier than people think it is. But you know what? My wife says that all the time. No, it's not. You just made it look easy because you've been doing it for 10 to 15 years.
Right.
But yeah, so it's I always tell everybody, like even you, if you're writing, people are like, how do I write a book? I'm like, well, you got to start writing. And you
Mhm.
start there and you move on. And then next thing you know, even if I started like what you said with a series of articles that I was just writing that nobody was reading. I was just writing things down like in a journal. And next thing you know, I was like, what if I expanded on these 10 articles? They'd probably be a book. And
Mhm.
like voila, Jump Seat Leadership is born. And I'm not a New York Times bestseller, but it's pretty cool to see the impact the book has had in the fire service.
Yeah, I read Jump Seat Leadership right after your podcast, and then I ordered it, and it's been on my reading list for a while. But really, watching you
Right.
on the scrap was like, okay, like I'm gonna read it. And there was a copy at the fire station, and I consumed the book in like less than a day. Like it was
Yeah.
that good because it was just stuff that I was like, oh my gosh, like this resonates like so well with me and where I'm at in my career and the position that I have in my fire department. And some things it made some things way easier to understand. And that's why I like to read some of the same books that might cover the same concept, because one person might be able to explain it, I won't even say better, but in a better way for me to understand
Right.
it. And I really appreciate what you said about your writing, in hopes of like if it reaches one person, then that's enough.
Hmm.
Because I was having the conversation with the podcast, and realistically, this started on a whim, and I'm really enjoying it. But I could care less how many people it reaches, and it is a selfish reason. But at the same time, like if I can help one person, if one person takes something out of one podcast, then that's enough for me. Because just like you said, if we can help somebody not make the mistakes that we made, or have experiences that we've had and learned from it, then it's worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I
So
agree, man. It's that attitude of like, yeah, our number's cool. Sure. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like it's cool to have 50,000 followers versus 500 followers, it's a milestone. But at the same point, it's like I wrote something the other day, like I'm not competing for an audience. Like I have an audience and they're the people that I'm supposed to reach. So like I'm
mhm.
not competing with anybody else out there. Like the only person I'm competing with is myself,
Right.
and competing with myself is like, well, then if I don't embrace what I'm here and called to do, then I'm not going to reach the people that I'm supposed to. I'm not competing with, Corley or you or, Jared Sergi or any of these guys that are out here. I'm doing my thing. And I'm like, if my message doesn't reach you, I'm cool with that. Like, I hope you find somebody that does. See you later. Now, if you want to be
Right.
negative, like, okay, cool. You probably won't be negative in person because people are pretty bold on social media, but you know how that goes.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I get that completely. Um, so I ordered, like I said, I ordered your books, and I have Engage the Enemy right here.
Love it.
Um, I read it 2 days ago, and once again, I consumed this book very quickly, and
Right.
not like rushed through it. I read every word, and I wanted to give you a compliment, because in my personal life, I've read two books now that the moment I started reading, I was like, this book is going to change my life. And I truly mean that. I don't say that because you're on my podcast. And I'll give the first one up, and it was Extreme Ownership by Jocko. I read that.
Great book. Great book.
Um, it was awesome. I read that book, I want to say about 5 years ago. And I won't say that I was in a low place, but I had gained tons of weight, and I was just in a bad place mentally as physical fitness pertained. I thought I was kind of in a dead end career working private EMS, and up until that point had accepted the fact that I was probably going to retire, this old grumpy, private EMS paramedic. And the moment I read that book, a few pages in, I just saw the light. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know another way to explain it, but I don't want to say it was the introduction, or no, it was the I'm trying to get the right word for it. The prologue. When I read that, I didn't know I knew somewhat of the contents just based off the scrap, and you kind of alluded to that on the other podcast, but I wasn't necessarily knew what the contents were of your book at that point. And immediately, like the man in the front yard with the armor, like I was just like it resonated with me. It put my life like right there. And it was different circumstances, sure, but I was just like, I don't know what this book is going to bring the rest of the way, but I was like, I'm going to read this as quickly as I can. And it was amazing. And like, I'll show a little bit of vulnerability. I went through, I don't want to say the same situation because it was not, but a similar situation with my family, as far as like kind of just growing distant and, I'm sure it was trauma related or whatever. And I was immersed fully into my job and growing further from my family, and it created some turmoil and some issues. And my wife and I were staring divorce down the right in the face. And luckily, we were able to overcome that. And a lot of it, once again, resonated with this book is because we put God at the center of our relationship. And man, I was like, I've never heard those principles put in that way. But I was like, I'm going to go back through this book page by page and take notes and go back and read Ephesians chapter 6 and really start putting those principles into practice. And I even already texted probably 4 or 5 people that I know would benefit from this book, and I'm just going to start passing it around to people. So,
dude, that's awesome. I mean, that means a lot. I really appreciate that because, especially the prologue, it's funny because like you said, you've been writing. I wrote that as like, I sat down one day and I just started writing on my phone, because I was like, man, all guys are involved in a war, they just don't know it, they can feel it, but some just don't acknowledge it. But I'm not going to give the prologue away. You're going to have to buy the book. But that prologue, it's a fictional lead in to a nonfiction, life story. But I just wrote it like kind of how I was feeling, and I think how a lot of guys are feeling, and it captured me. Like when I wrote it and I read back through the prologue, and I had my wife read it, and she was like, "Where's the rest?" I was like, "Well, I don't even know what I'm doing with this." And she was like, "Man, that was so good." And I wrote it more like just an article. And as I started developing the Engage the Enemy book, I was like, that's the beginning of the book. And she was like, "Man, that would fit perfect in what you're writing right now." And it led in right to the story. And then I realized, well, I got to finish the story and so I start with that, fictional story in the beginning. That's pretty much real life for a lot of guys. And then I'd write the book, and then I close out the fictional story. And I gave it to my son, and he was like flipping through. He's like, "What? Where's?" I was like, "Well, that's it. That's all I have." And he was like, "Are you writing something based on this?" My son's like 17. He knows me pretty well. He knows what I'm about. And he's like, "I just wanted to read more based on that. You haven't even told me what this book is about yet." And the principles, like anybody who's been like in around church or God, or people say armor of God, it gets weird, So I was like, hey, let's just talk about this like for real. Let's talk about the principles, like what they are. I'm not going to tell you to pick up the shield of faith because half the people are going to look at you like you're friggin' nuts. But let's talk about faith and what it looks like. And you got to have vision and goals, and you got to be on mission. Like, let's talk about how we can actually apply these things as principles for people that know nothing about the Bible. Because you don't need the Bible. You don't have to be religious. You don't even have to have a relationship with God to read this book. they're just principles that if you apply them, they will work. The principle of truth. I mean, geez, look around the world. You talk about struggling with truth. It's a
Mm.
freaking mess right now. But and then personal truth. Like I just really get down into like, man, be honest with yourself, dude. Like, so I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot.
Yeah, and I think the best thing about this book is it's going to hit a lot of people. Like once people read this, it's going to resonate with them. And for me personally, like you just plug and play the details of this book, the nitty gritty parts that are personal to you with anybody else's, and those principles still apply.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be the exact same thing that you went through by any means. And another thing that I appreciate, and I'll probably bring these two guys up anytime I talk about leadership, but John Maxwell and Craig Groeschel, they're both
Hmm.
very faith based, but something they do very well is they tell you all these principles that they're teaching, and they'll let you know like that they're Christians and that they believe in God and that that's the center of it, but they don't ever try to force their,
Right.
and I don't really want to say religion, but they don't want to force their religion down people's throats, but
Right.
they make sure to let people know that there is some faith required in that. And daily I read a Maxwell devotional. It's 365 days, and it gives you a Bible verse, and then he goes on about the principle of leadership based off of that Bible verse, right?
Yeah.
And for me personally, I love that. I mean, it's awesome, and that's what I enjoyed about your book as well. Um, it's a great book, and I really do hope people buy it, because I think more people are going to really enjoy it the way that I did, because you did a really good job at that.
Yeah.
So jump seat leadership, I wanted to talk about that last, if you will, because I knew that was something that a lot of people want to know about, and it's something that I've put a lot of thought to, and it's something that technically I do daily. I mean, I'm a tailboard fireman, and I ride I have to say this on every podcast. I ride an engine and a medic, unfortunately, but that's what we do.
Right.
We swap back and forth, and you know, we uh, we have to find effective ways to lead from that jump seat. And a couple of the questions that I had in my head that I just haven't quite found the answer to, your book like actually answered those,
Yeah.
and
Awesome.
it was really good. I mean, I really enjoyed it. So I had some notes and some questions written up, and one of the first things that I wanted to ask you is, because I feel like everyone has a different definition, but if you had to give your definition of leadership, what would that be?
Yeah. And honestly, like I don't even like the word leadership, which is going to sound weird, right? Because
Sure.
it's a pretty popular word and I use it and I'm never getting rid of it. I only say I don't like the word leadership because I think it has a million different definitions and everybody puts their own spin on it. I think influence would just be a more accurate term. And honestly, influence is probably fits in the definition of leadership. I think any good definition of leadership involves the ability to influence and impact other people to accomplish a common goal or task, right? That would be like
Right.
a book definition of leadership that I 100% agree with. But my main thing when it comes to leadership is influence. It's about influence and impact. And I think it's not only about influence and impact. For me, leadership is about influence and impact, but it's about something bigger than me. Like where am I taking people? If I'm leading, I have to be moving, I have to be going somewhere. If you have followers, they're only following because you're moving and you're going somewhere. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is you can't be a leader unless you have somewhere to go. And it has to be somewhere that people want to follow you, or you won't be able to lead them there because nobody will follow you and then you won't be leading. So it's kind of like this weird leadership math, but for me, it's influence and impact. And I just think it's bigger. For me, it's bigger than the fire service. Like, I'm impacting and influencing the men and women I work with, because I make a choice to do that. Not perfect, plenty of days I fall short, but it goes back to what I'm doing in my personal life, what I'm doing in my free
Mhm.
time, relationships, leadership encompasses so many things, but really it's the ability to influence and impact people. And I would say, man, it's got to be for a worthy cause, if you will. You know, it's nobody's going to follow you to a place that nobody wants to go. Like if somebody says, "Hey, follow me," what's the first thing you're going to ask them? Well,
Right.
where you go? Where are you going? Oh, I don't know. Okay. Well, let me know when you know, and maybe I'll follow you, but I'm not just going to follow you.
Hmm.
And that's something I write about in Engage the Enemy, how so many guys are just out running around, walking around their
Hmm.
personal lives, telling their wife and their kids to follow them, but their wife and their kids are like, I don't even know where you're going because you don't know where you're going. Why would I follow you? But yeah,
Yeah,
so I think
it
influence and
does.
impact.
It does also go, and I don't want to make this entire thing faith based, but like we just discussed, like and it's in your book. I'm almost positive, like the it's I think it's probably a proverb, but without a vision, the people will perish, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
you have to have
100%.
a vision, a destination of where you're going, and
That's the
uh,
fire department too, though. I
right,
mean,
right.
like, look, I got in the fire department. I was so stoked. Like, I'd gotten deployed in the middle of the academy. So I came back, finished up, got to the street. I was so excited about just being in the fire department and getting on the truck and doing the job. I really didn't have any goals or
Hmm.
vision or anything. I just went to work every day stoked, which is not a bad thing at all. Like, it's a great part of my career. But I finally got to a point where I thought about I should probably have a goal in here.
Hmm.
Maybe do I want to get promoted someday? Do I want to be an engineer? Do I want to be an operator? Um, because vision keeps you on mission, like it does. It keeps you moving forward. And in the fire department, a lot of guys, you talk to them, they're stagnant, they're disgruntled, they're upset, and you start asking them about vision, mission, or goals, and they don't really have any. And
Right.
um, it's I was talking to my kids the other day. I was like, even big goals can seem overwhelming. Set a daily goal. I'm going to go for a 20-minute walk. Like, I don't care what it is, just something that you can
Hmm.
accomplish and
Hmm.
start a pattern and build some momentum of accomplishing the small things. And then, oh, if I can accomplish these five small things, maybe I can accomplish one big thing.
Right. Yeah.
Man, I used to think everybody knew what I knew, right? Like everybody's going through this, everybody knows what I know. It's not true. It's not true,
Yeah.
and I think that's one thing that guys like you and guys out there don't understand is we look at people and how can they not know this? But they just don't. So
Yeah.
it is up to us to tell them and teach them. Now, in 2 years, if they're still blowing people off and, okay, well, we got another issue.
Hmm.
But initially, not everybody knows what we know. And I really just thought everybody was passionate like me. Everybody knew what I knew. Everybody understood that men need purpose. Everybody understood that you had to be a badass fireman. Everybody understood that this job is about sacrifice. It's not true. And I wish it was, but it's not. And my wife says all the time, she's like, you want people to think like you. And I'm like, you're damn right I do, because life would be so much easier,
Right. Right.
but they
Yeah.
just don't. And that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So what and what specific, and this is once again probably a personal question and a question from one of my friends when I told him that I was talking to you and explained to him engage the enemy, and he was curious is in what specific ways has being a Christ follower like impacted your leadership?
Oh man, honestly, it's probably the foundation. First of all, like it's hard that people are like keep faith out of it. I'm like, not gonna happen. Like,
No.
and only because it's just the foundation of who I am. Like I'm not gonna sit in your corner and corner you and be like, have you heard about Jesus today? Like I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
you may not get that out of me. But no, it's been huge, man. I mean, if I look at Jesus as an example, just as a man, right? We're not talking about religion. We're talking about leadership. And if you just read his life and how he led his people and the people that were closest to him, he's a great example of a good leader. Forget forget all the religious stuff, because then I get it. Some people are like, oh, they're talking about God and Jesus. I'm out of here. Turn the podcast off, whatever. If you're offended, I think you should listen through this. But like Jesus was a good leader. I mean, he took care of everybody around him. It was not about the mission was not about him. It was a worthy cause that he adopted. It was attractive. Like he took people
Hmm.
somewhere that they wanted to go. He was able to articulate it. He was able to explain it. I mean, so to me, it's the perfect example of a servant leader, which has become really popular 6 years. Like it's something new. It's not new.
Right.
It's
Right.
pretty damn old. I mean,
Hmm.
if you're looking at where it came from. And so for me, just learning really to put other people first all the time, because inherently we're selfish people.
Hmm.
And, I want this done because I want it done and I want it done this way. But just reminding myself to always put people first, and not just the citizens that we serve, but the men and women that work for me. and then realize that they're not so much working for me as I am working for them and making sure they're taken care of on a daily basis. And I think if I can stay focused on they're like I'm working for them. This is more of a servant leadership style. And
Mhm.
trust me, it goes from servant to selfish real quick. I mean, that's just because who we are. And
Mhm.
I
Right.
got buddies around me that check me, and I got a wife that'll, tell me the truth if I need it. But I think no, just being a Christ follower, it always centers me back to this mission is not about you. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like pride's great. Like pride is not a terrible thing. It can be if misused.
Sure.
And I think for me, it just keeps me grounded and reminding me like, hey, this isn't about you. This is about other people. The mission is about other people. Like for me, life is about God and life is about people. And I think as a leader, even if you're not a Christ follower, like whatever, but as a leader, um, it has to be about people. The minute it becomes about you, that's when I think it crosses over into manipulation.
Right.
And, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't agree. I'm like, I don't care if you disagree or not. It's my opinion. So you don't have to agree with my opinion. But
Right.
I think once leadership becomes about, I want you to accomplish things for me and what I want. And so I can be strengthened, I can be empowered, I can be encouraged, and I can accomplish my mission. And I'll do whatever it takes to get you guys like, we're starting to talk about a little bit of manipulation. Like,
Mhm.
example, I used to say like Hitler was a good leader. Don't agree with his cause, obviously. There are some crazy people that still do. But I think he was a master manipulator over anything else, and he looked like a good leader. Now, there were probably some leadership qualities in there, whatever, but he was a master manipulator and he manipulated a lot of people into doing some pretty terrible things.
Yeah.
So yeah, honestly, short answer, it really keeps me focused on the mission and the fact that this is about other people. It's not about me. I'm not writing book. I write books selfishly just to write, but I want them to impact people. I go to work
Mhm.
for other people. Everything is about other people. Like I'm putting out my life story in books and sharing, some pretty, raw details about my life because I want other guys to be successful. I'm not writing this stuff so to capture attention. I'm writing it so a guy can read it and go, shit, I can't believe he just wrote that in this book. Like I'm going through the same thing. Nobody's ever done this before. So yeah, man, it keeps me focused on the mission and the fact that like Jesus was about people. Not that I'm Jesus by any means. I'm pretty far from it. We do have the same initials, which is pretty cool, but other than that,
Yeah. Well, two things. I love what you said about the whole servant leadership thing, and I'll steal a quote because I don't know who said it, but it was just like a post on social media. But they said, "Servant leadership isn't a type of leadership; it is leadership." And I was like,
right.
100%. Like I
Yeah.
agree, one like absolutely.
I don't know
And
who
then, and
wrote
then
that,
I'm
but that's great. I've never heard that before.
yeah, I uh and I'm really glad you said this because it kind of just preludes or goes into my next thing is Hitler, right? Like people do, they say he's a great leader, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. Like obviously, at some way weird, wicked, twisted way, he was a good leader, I guess. But I do agree with you. I think he was more of a master manipulator, and for me, where I personally believe he wasn't a good leader is I believe that motives matter. And if we look at Hitler's motives, right, they
100%.
obviously weren't for good. And so like knowing that your motives matter, and we kind of just hit on it a little bit, is what is important to keep in mind as we're leading as it pertains to leading from that jump seat.
Yeah. So I think honestly, you got to have a why. I mean, I think you have to have a why. Like if you're going to lead, lead from the jump seat, lead from any seat, lead from wherever. And I mean, the jump seat's where we all start out. Everybody starts out in the back of the truck. I don't know anybody that got hired on the fire department as an officer. Maybe it's a thing some places, but it's pretty common to start in the back of the truck. And I think honestly, the biggest thing you have to do is you have to establish your like why are you in the fire department? Why are you there? What's the reason? You've got to have a solid reason so when things get hard, you'll be able to push through. And I think the biggest thing if you're going to lead from the jump seat is self-leadership. You have got to be leading yourself in different areas. Now, you may not be great in all those areas. Pick something that you're passionate about, but you have to be like leadership is attractive. So I really think self-leadership is huge. Nobody will follow you unless you are doing stuff to lead yourself. And by leading yourself, I don't mean being a perfect leader. I mean, just being somebody that is making an effort to move forward every day, realizes that you have bad days, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to say the wrong thing, you're going to, make the wrong joke at the wrong time, but you're going to come back and own it. I mean, ownership's huge when it comes to self-leadership. And I think if you're going to lead from that jump seat, self leadership is huge. And I'll tell you, it's funny. So I wrote jump seat leadership and I was like, man, I want to add something else. I feel like guys need more. So I wrote a workbook to go with it so guys could really get into the workbook and tackle some goals and figure some stuff out. Right. So what's
Mhm.
funny? That workbook is my least purchased book because you actually have to do work. And I think that is what people want to change. Like firemen want change until they have to change themselves, right? They'll read an
Yeah.
article, they'll like a post, they'll listen to a podcast, they'll jump up and down, and then you see them a month later, and it's like, what are you doing? Ah, well, the administration, my officer, the guys around me, like, what are we? No, what are you doing to lead yourself? Like, you're coming to work every day. What are you doing to lead your perspective? What are you doing to lead your mindset? Um, so it really is. It's a lot of self-leadership. And I think it's hard. Self-reflection's hard. Nobody who wants to look in the mirror, who wants to look in the mirror after Christmas and like, man, I ate a lot of freaking cheese. I ate a log of pepperoni, 2 gallons of eggnog, because I knew the first was coming and I'm going to join a gym and not go half the year. Like,
Right.
nobody likes self-reflection, but it is one of the most important tools. And I think if people can even see you just working on things, that's leadership because you're going somewhere. And everybody's different, right? Like I got guys that are like super into fitness, then I got guys that are super into like hardcore training, guys that are super into the rescue, engine guys, ladder guys, guys that really love the paramedic stuff, the ambulance. But so you just lead in the area that you're called to lead in. And I think if we all actually stepped up and led in our different areas of expertise, we'd be surprised how the puzzle comes together instead of blaming somebody else or they're not doing it. And I think that's a common thing in the fire service that I went through that I talk about in jump seat leadership is it's just comfort. I'd been in a little over 10 years and I knew the job and I wasn't perfect at it, but I had a good foundation. I know how to drag hose lines into a building effectively, throw ladders, cut holes in roofs, pull people. Like I know how to do this stuff. So I was just comfortable and just coming to work and just doing the things and wasn't providing a lot of leadership and, a bad officer. Like I just would on scene do the opposite because I'm not going to let him kill me, but I'm also not causing any problems at the station. Like, whatever, we'll figure it out, leading a guy here and there. But yeah, man, it's that stuff where you're sitting in the back of that truck, whatever seat you're in, you're never going to be an officer. That is the most important job in the fire service, in my opinion, because if you're looking at officers, like I'm an officer for 4 years. So now I'm practicing the only style of leadership there is. I'm glad you said that is servant leadership. That's what I practice because I'm not good at it. So that's why I practice it because it's a daily thing. But just by way of numbers, I'm outnumbered by the firemen that are in my station. I'm completely outnumbered. So if they're only looking to me for leadership and none of them step up and lead at all in any area, man, we're going to be a shit crew. I mean, somebody's got to lead in some kind of area. So I think a lot of the times, you look at the officer or the engineer or whoever your, you know, formal leadership person is, and us guys in the back that are comfortable are like, whatever, it's not my job. It's not my position. I mean,
Yeah.
so technically, it's not your job. On paper, it is 110% not your job, and you do not get paid to do it. As somebody who's taken an oath, which I took an oath, I had to raise my hand and say stuff when I came in the fire department. It's not a job, it's your calling to come in here and actually take care of the men and women around you. So that whole it's not my job thing, dude, I've said it. I've had that attitude. I still got to brush it off every now and then. I work for a captain right now, and sometimes things always slip through the cracks. I don't care who you are. And I'll catch myself like, man, I'm not doing that. That's his job. And as soon as that comes into my brain, I'm like, I'm already typing on the computer doing it because I'm like, man, I can't do this. Practice what you
Right.
post, right?
Mhm.
So
Absolutely, absolutely. I,
yeah,
I I love the controllable, and a lot
right.
of times it's you are the controllable. You are the
Yep.
only person that's 100% within your control. And I talk to guys all the time that are just like, my officer this and my officer that, and I'm just like, we're focusing on the wrong things.
Right.
There's nothing, and I get that you can't go do some dynamic drill by yourself, but there's nothing saying that you can't go down to the bay and train by yourself. There's a lot
Right.
of stuff that you can do by yourself, and like I said, with the motive ordeal, like it as a tailboard, it almost becomes a manipulation thing. Stick with me a little bit, is to try and influence. I'll use that word more than anything to get your officer to cater to what the crew needs. And I think that's the big part. It's not to what I need, it's what the crew needs. And if we can influence our officers to get out and train, or do this or do that, and if they're not going to do that, at some point you do have to look in the mirror, and you have to lead yourself. And that's any way that you can. There's nothing saying you can't throw ladders by yourself. There's nothing saying you can't do mask up drills by yourself. Focus on the tripod position by yourself. Whatever it is, like you can control that stuff. And until you're put in a position to where you are getting people on board and people are out there with you, like that's what we have to focus on, is what we are doing.
Yeah.
Because
I
like you
mean,
said,
and the thing is, like, we have good officers out there. Like, we have great
mm-hmm,
officers out there. And I think it's just like you said, we have good officers. Yes, we have terrible officers, but we have terrible firemen too. Like, they're all over the place. But just by way of numbers, it's harder to hide as a terrible officer just because there's fewer officers than there are firefighters. If you're a terrible firefighter, you can hide better. If you're a
right,
terrible officer, it's like, you're probably going to be exposed at some point because you're up front, you're on the computer, you're on the radio, you're the one talking most of the time, you're in charge of the station. It's really hard to hide. And I think, man, the biggest thing, like, I don't ever, I'm an officer now, right? So I'm not like, I have no issue with officers. I just have an issue with anybody in the fire department that's not here to do their job. I don't care what
mm-hmm,
rank you are. If you're not here to do your job, we're going to have a problem. Like, I don't care what rank you are. Now, as far as officers and firefighters go, half the problem is firefighters are not actually speaking up because we like to talk a lot of shit and not own anything and take action.
mm-hmm,
We
yep,
just like to talk. And hey, have you had a conversation with the officer? No. Okay, well, that's the first step. Because as an officer, if you come to me and I'm not like, hey, look at me, I'm perfect. If I don't know what I'm doing and you come to me and say the crew needs something and I don't know how to do it and you know how to do it, just any normal person would say, okay, let's just do it. You can lead the whole drill. We get the people out there that are threatened and, they're out there. They are out there. I've run into them. I'll be honest, there are not as many of those people as people think. There are
sure.
more firefighters that don't want to speak up because they'd rather just talk about it than be about it. That's just a fact. I mean, it is
Yeah,
what
and
it
no
is.
no crew will be what they could be without
Right.
honest conversation up the chain of command.
100%.
If you can't have, and like I'm very blessed, so it's kind of weird to talk about this, but just putting myself into that position, like if you can't have that tough conversation with your officer, saying that, day one with my officer, he asked not only, or he didn't only tell us his expectations of us, but he also asked what our expectations of him were. And
Awesome.
we were very honest with him, and he's lived up to that. And if he wasn't doing that, I know for my situation that he would be 100% open to that. But I have to be willing to be able to go to him and be like, hey, Cap, like, look, we've been slacking here. Look, haven't been living up to what we claim that we are, and we need to do better about that. And if you can't do that, you're just gonna your crew is gonna suffer. They're gonna perish at that. But realistically, you and that relationship with your officer is gonna perish as well, because they don't know. Some, it's like you said, things slip through the cracks, and sometimes people have stuff going on outside of work, and they, I don't want to say become lazy, but they overlook things. And if we are unable to have those conversations with our officers or our drivers or those people above us, then we'll never be what we can be or what we could
Yeah.
be.
Well, it's like you said, we are supposed to be a team. I mean, we're supposed to be a team. We're supposed to function like a team. Like I try and make work function like a team. And my captain's the same way. Like if we have an issue, we talk about it. We haven't always
Mm-hmm.
been that way, but we got to the point where it's like, hey, we're not communicating how we should be. We've got to communicate, or this station, it's just not going to go well.
Right.
So, and the other thing I tell people all the time is you don't have to have a great relationship or friendship with anybody in the station, but you do have to have a relationship with them. A working
Mm-hmm.
relationship is very different than a relationship outside of work. So you can
Mm-hmm.
come to, it's not, and it's not pretend either. You could come to work and have a great working relationship with somebody, but not want to drink a beer with him around a campfire when you leave work. It is possible, and it's not
Yeah.
fake because people do it every single freaking day. Like it's called work. You go to work and you treat people like human beings. You go to work, you communicate, and it's like you said, we are a team, and I've been on both sides of this. I was a fireman for 15 years before I got promoted to lieutenant. I've been a lieutenant for almost the last 4 years. So I've been on both sides. The only thing that changed was my title and the responsibilities they pay me for. It wasn't like they tossed me a badge and some magic happened and I was an amazing person now. Like
Mm.
the same fireman I was for 15 years when they tossed me that badge, that was the same reputation I was going to have starting out as a lieutenant. Now, people want to see what kind of officer you're going to be, but you're not going to change 15 years of a career just because somebody tosses you a badge. So you think about leadership and jump seat leadership, and really what it's all about is just do your job, lead from the jump seat, embrace the area you're called to lead in, and then one day, if you do decide to move up, which is not a bad thing if you don't, you'll already have practiced all this leadership stuff. It won't be new to you.
Yeah.
Like leadership's already a pain in the ass. You're already behind the eight ball half the time. And the minute you get promoted, everybody's looking to you for answers and you don't have them
Yeah.
because you just got promoted last week. And any senior fireman probably feels the same way. Like, hey, this guy's been in 30 years. He probably knows, but he just may not have encountered that before. Not that he's not willing to help you out, but I think that's one of the biggest things we forget about is, man, we're a team. Like we
Hmm.
are a team. Like my guys at work and the officers, we're all supposed to be functioning as a team. So when it goes back to the officer said this or the fireman this, I'm like exactly what you just said. Well, everybody needs to get in the room and shut the door, and there needs to be some honest conversation. And if that doesn't happen, nothing can move forward. And everybody
Yeah.
creates sides and cliques. Man, that makes a miserable 24-hour shift. It can make a miserable
Mhm.
station. Who wants to be stationed where everybody's talking in corners about other people? I don't want to do that.
Right. 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 Yeah. And they said, I've heard this somewhere that like it said your ability to lead up equals your ability to move up. So the better that you can lead up that help you tremendously as you move up. And I just wanted to relate to a story real quick because I have a friend that works at a different department than I do, and him and his crew were going through this whole ordeal. And he had an officer that was not doing their job as it comes to like training and stuff like that. And my buddy, he's a fairly plugged in fireman and he knows a lot of stuff. And he kind of took the whole it's not my job mindset. And we had talked at links, and then it just kind of hit me. I'm like, yeah, but like the guys on your crew look to you. He was already an informal leader up until this point. And I don't necessarily know the details, but his officer slacked off or whatever. And I was like, those guys are looking to you for that leadership at this point. And like, what kind of example are you setting to the guy that's been on your crew for, I don't know, he said like 6 months, that whenever he's not doing his job, that means that it's okay for me not to do my job as well. And I thought that was the big part of it. But uh, another thing that I try to tell a bunch of the new guys, and I still consider myself a new guy, but it's just like shared experiences, one of
Dude,
those
I
things that,
consider myself a new guy, and I've been it's
yeah,
just 19 years. I'm like, I feel like I
I'm a
just got
much
here.
more new guy than you.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I do honestly. I feel like I just got here, and most days I feel like I don't know anything because something hits me in the face every day I didn't know. But
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
one of the things that I feel like I found success in, and people tell me this, and I feel like it's developed over time, and for me, it's just been through experience. Is uh, the intuition part of it, and for me, it's more of an anticipation. Anticipate the needs of your crew, and for me, I think it goes further than just on calls, and I think it's also like in the firehouse, as well, and uh, being able to have the intuition to know that like, hey, we're first due on a fire, I'm going to know that I'm going to pull line or whatever. I just use an example. But have you found any success in like really learning how to develop that intuition quicker, or does it just come with time? Does that make sense?
yeah, no, I think it makes perfect sense. I think honestly, everybody's different. I think everybody's different. I think intuition really goes back to life experience, what you've been, where you've been, how long you've been doing it. I mean, if you get a guy who, I'll give you an example. Like I was deployed before I really hit the ground running in the fire department. So situational awareness for us was huge while we were deployed. We're doing cool stuff in Black Hawks, with First Force Recon Marines. Like it was a blast. Dude, I got to do a lot of cool stuff. We did a lot of like not cool stuff too, troop transport, but situational awareness was huge when we left the wire. I mean, it just was. So when I got to the fire department, I would say that area, my situational awareness, it was heightened, if you will. And
Mhm.
so intuition in certain areas may be like, hey, we're in a bad spot. Hey, we shouldn't be here. Or being on a medical call, looking around like, okay, there's a lot of people gathering around right now. PD's here, but there's only one officer. There's a crowd of 60 people. Maybe we should get moving. So I
Mhm.
think intuition goes back to situational awareness, but I do think it takes time. It wasn't like I had that situational awareness in the military right away either. And I think being in the military prior to the fire department helped me develop some of those areas quicker, but there's no shortcut, I think, to
Mhm.
intuition. There's no and I think honestly, the older you get, the older I've gotten, the less risk I'm willing to take for stupid things. Like, dude, I'm a risk taker. Building's on fire. I don't think about not going in until something pops up and says, hang on a second, you're going to get your crew killed if you go in there. Whereas I was 22-year-old Josh Fireman, not in charge. We're going in there. And if they try and hold me back, I'm going to be pissed. In fact, I know they're going to try and hold us back. So we have to get in there as quick as possible before we get called out. So I think honestly, it does take time. I think intuition takes time where you're in, um, those spots where it's like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be here, or maybe this is how I handle the situation. I don't think there's a lot of
Yeah.
shortcuts, and I do think it depends on the situation. Maybe it's medical calls, the fire scene, handling a personnel, situation in the station. But yeah, I don't think there's shortcuts. It does take time. I think the more time you spend and the more you pay attention and the more you read or listen to stuff like this and educate yourself. I don't want to say it speeds up the process because I don't feel like there's a better teacher than life experience,
Sure.
but I feel like it will help you. If I read a book and then I run in the situation the next day, I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can apply that here. So it
Right.
definitely takes time then, man. And I'm telling you, like I said, the older I've gotten, and I don't want to say, I guess the longer I've been in the fire department, dude, my wife hates the fact that I think, but I don't think. Like I just go do. But I think
Right.
that's part of our job. You just kind of go do. And then later you're like, I probably shouldn't have maybe done that. But I think the more experienced you are, you have a lot less of those moments where it's like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Um, you're taking risks, but they're calculated. And I think
Mhm.
there's a big difference between there's cowboy and there's calculated. Calculated, you get to go home to your family. Cowboy, somebody shows up at your door in a white car and tells your wife that you're not coming home. So I'm all about taking risks, and I'm the last guy to sit outside. I'm the last officer to sit in the yard and take command. I just don't do that shit. I'm in there with my crew. It is what it is. But at the
Yeah.
same point, I also have a responsibility to make sure, and this goes for everybody on the crew, not just officers. I have a responsibility to get everybody home at the end of the day
Mhm.
and to make sure I go home and they go home. Even before I got promoted, if there was a bad situation, I wasn't scared to speak up and be like, we are not doing that. This is why we are not doing that. I will be glad to sit in your office later. But those were pretty high stress situations because I am a big proponent of like, hey, on scene, let's just get the job done. Unless it's something that's going to get somebody killed, it's time to speak up. So, but
Right.
yeah,
I don't know if you've ever read it, but there's a book written by Malcolm Gladwell, and it's called Blink, I believe. And a lot of it
I've
it's a
seen it.
lot
I've
of
never read
science.
it though.
It's actually a good book if you're kind of into it because it's a little nerdy and it's a lot about the subconscious brain and endorphins and all this stuff. And it talks about how there's a lot of choices that we make that we don't ever even give a second thought to because our brain has calculated thousands of things in a matter of seconds. And tailboard misfits, I know, but once again, I'm going to relate something to EMS. Like we had this conversation with one of the guys going through FTO, and is like the subconscious mind is the difference maker between why an experienced paramedic can walk through the threshold of the door and know, hey, we're about to intubate this person. And
Yeah.
yet you're sitting over there being 4 months into the job and still doing a patient assessment and asking how long it's been going on. And we're in the ambulance prepping for intubation. Like that's the difference maker. And all that is just like you said, is based off time and experience and seeing these things time and time and time again.
Yeah.
So
You know,
I'm
it's
glad you
funny
said
you
that.
mentioned the paramedic thing, and like look, I swapped my whole we did the same thing, right? I rode the engine,
Mm-hmm.
rode the medic, rode the ladder, rode the medic. You know, when I got promoted, we don't swap anymore. I mean, people like look, I'm not gonna lie, EMS is not my favorite thing in the world, but it was part of my job and I was good at it while I did it because it was part of my job and I wanted to be good at my job. So
Mm-hmm.
people hate on the ambulance, but look, the ambulance pays the bills.
Yeah.
And I'll be straight up honest. There's some guys out there now, man. I can't remember their name. I think it's called Ownership of the Box. And they just started a Facebook page, and I was like, good for them, because nobody wants to own the box
Yeah.
anywhere. Nobody. But
Yeah.
honestly, look, and so I've been doing this job, like I said, almost 19 years, and you've been doing it a little while. But listen, and I'm not bragging. This is just facts. I have saved countless people on that ambulance. I just have, just because we have had a lot of calls. Not because I'm a fucking superhero. I've just saved a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people because I've been part of a lot of situations where a lot of people need help. I work in a busy department. They call 911 and we go and we try and do everything we can to make sure their situation gets better, whether it's life or death or toe pain or toothache. But I've saved a lot of people on those ambulances. Countless. Only because I lost count. I have not received one award for riding in that and I don't want one. That's not what I'm saying. I'm going somewhere with this. A couple of years ago, I ran in a burning building of a two-alarm fire, got separated from my crew, rescued a kid, got the fire service medal of honor for
Mm-hmm.
one kid. So I get the hate or the like look, I get the burnout and all that. Like I mean I
Mm-hmm.
hear you. The trauma and like I'm working on peer support in my department. I get all that stuff, but the box gets such a bad rap. I'm like, you want to help people? That's where we help
Mm-hmm.
98.9% of our people. Our job, the fire department part of our job, unless you're burning down the city every day, which that just doesn't happen as much across the country. I wish it
Mm-hmm.
was. I love going to fires, man. I wish it was fire every day, for my sake. That's selfish. That means somebody's house is
Right.
burning down, so it sucks for them. But, I'm not
Yeah.
going there to roast marshmallows either. But,
Yeah.
it's the box gets such a bad rap. And I've been there, man. And like,
Mm.
I'm still like, I joked with my guys the other day. I jumped in the box. They were all sitting in there talking. I'm like, this is where you chose to sit down and have family time.
Yeah.
So I,
Yeah.
I jump up in the driver's seat. We're in the bay, and they're like, "Do you miss it?" I'm like, no.
No.
I
Well,
don't. I don't miss not sleeping. I don't miss the BS. But honestly, I do like helping people, and I got to help a lot of people on the ambulance. So, yeah, we've been swapping back and forth forever. It's not going away anytime soon. It is
no.
literally a big part of what we do. And I've gotten to help so many people on the ambulance. And I'm not even a paramedic. I'm an advanced EMT, whatever the heck that is. It's like, somebody told me it's like if a penguin and an elephant had a baby and it's just weird thing was created. Because I can
Yeah.
give these drugs, but not these drugs. And
Right.
like nobody
You can
knows
start
really what I can
IVs.
do. Yeah, I can start
Yeah.
IV and give you Narcan. Like I can give you Solumedrol now. Like I can start a mag drip, but when was the last time I did that?
Right.
So it's
Right.
so
I'm
crazy. But
I'm really glad you said that though, because I will be the first person to tell you that I have had a very sour attitude towards the ambulance. And I'm sure we've all
sure.
been there. And
Yeah,
at the root of it, like that's where I started, is on the ambulance. And
sure.
I uh I do at the core of it like still really, really enjoy the ambulance. And at the time that I was in that sour attitude, I had someone part of my tribe, if you will, that held me accountable, and he asked me like, why are you in the fire service? And up until that point, I don't know that I had given it much thought because I gave the most basic ass answer that you could, and it's to help people. And they told me the exact same thing that you just said. How many people do you think that you're going to be able to affect on the ambulance versus riding the engine or the truck or whatever? And I was
Hands
like,
down.
you're right. You're right. And now that's been said to me. Now it's one of my favorite things to ask people when they get that sour attitude towards, like, because I know they probably haven't put much thought to their why behind their being a fireman, either that or they have, and they're not going to tell me immediately. And it's just like,
Sure.
well, you're going to have the opportunity to save more people on that ambulance than you ever will on that engine.
Yeah, and if it's
So
part of your job, because we look, firemen like to talk. I like to talk. I'm a talker. I get to do
mhm.
this, I get to travel and talk. I write books, big videos. Like firemen love to freaking talk. right?
Mm-hmm.
We like to love to talk about how good we are at this, or look at this, or death before dishonor. We love to talk all this shit about stuff, but the ambulance, if it's part of your job, yeah, you should be good at that too, because it's
Mm-hmm.
part of your job. So it's not okay to be really good at this and suck at that. Like
Yep.
for me,
Yep.
it is we do both in my city. So it's not okay for me to get on the fire truck and give 100% and get on the box and be like, I'm going to give 40 because I'm really here for that. Well, then that's the wrong department for you because we
Mm-hmm.
expect 100% on both. Like, have I struggled with attitude over the years? 110%. The fire truck is way more fun than the ambulance for me. It just
For
is.
sure. No, for
But it
sure.
doesn't mean I'm going to get on there and be terrible at my job. You know what? I'll have a bad attitude the whole time I'm good at my job. But
Mm-hmm.
to get on there and be like, oh God, I'm not doing this, or I don't know. Why should I have to remember the doses? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Why should you have to remember pump pressures? Like, guys, it's the same thing. And it's so funny because a lot of us hold EMS certifications,
Mm-hmm.
but we want to act like we don't. We show up on scene like we're not going to help out because our job is fire. No, your job is to help people, and you want to do it on the fire side. But then come to find out, sometimes when we get to the fire side, those guys aren't really good at their job either because really they just wanted a t-shirt and a badge. So
Yep.
you talk about we do a lot. We do a lot of talking. We really do. And I mean, it's look, there's a lot of departments that are doing both. And
Mm-hmm.
EMS has always gotten a bad rap. I get it. I've had a bad attitude over the years. Like you said, same kind of thing. I can remember being at Station 2 downtown. And I got transferred and I was like, cool, where am I going? They were like the other station downtown. And I was like, oh my God. So I did 10 years downtown Norfolk. It was busy,
Yeah.
and I had a bad attitude to the point, same kind of thing. Got to a station. There's a guy that had been there like 19 years, best attitude in the world, always smiling, just went on the calls, picked people up, did his job. And he was like, it's just do your job, help the people. It's not worth complaining about. This is what you're here for. But it
Yeah.
just took me here like, oh, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
pissing myself off. Like
Yeah.
these people are not laying in bed like, oh man, he just laid down. Okay, cool, call right now. Like it
Yeah.
feels like that,
For sure. Yeah.
but that's not how it happens. And I think for me, if I didn't change my perspective, so now also I had to live up to that for myself. I was like, this is part of my job. I want to be good at my job. I want to be known as somebody that if I'm your partner on the ambulance and you're the paramedic, you can count on me.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't so much just the citizens as it was if you're the paramedic and I'm your BLS guy, I want you to know that I can do everything to my level. I know where everything is at. You're not going to have to write all the calls, do the reports, call the hospital because we can split most of the things because I know how to do it. And I think, guys, you just got to embrace both parts of the job. And if you don't, if your department does fire and EMS and you don't want to embrace, you want to embrace one and not the other, or you want to be shitty in one and not the other, you probably need to find a new department. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
go work for a fire department that doesn't have fire truck. I mean, doesn't have EMS, doesn't have ambulances. But if they have them, you better do your job. I don't
Yeah.
understand how people can correlate the two. Like, I would challenge, then you're not really here to help people. You're here to do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not who we need in the fire service, but that's just my opinion.
No, and you said it. You said it right. Like we need to be the best at both jobs. And Chief Rick Lasky said last night on the scrap, they were talking about this exact thing, and he surprised me. He said, "I'm going to surprise a couple of people," and he said he was a nerd when it came to EMS, and he said, "We're either the best at everything or we're not the best at all." And I was like,
Yeah,
"Okay."
it's
Like that
so
was,
good. It's so true though.
yeah, yeah,
It's true.
yeah. It was convicting, and I when I got hired on at the department I got hired or that I work at now, the administration, like in the middle of the chief's interview, they all came in and they made it known. Like it wasn't a surprise when I got hired and did my first shift on the ambulance that I ran 20 calls. Like I knew what I was getting myself
Same
into.
thing. Yeah.
It is just what I signed up for. And yeah,
Yep.
like you said, it does suck some days and some nights I go home sleepy or some mornings I go home sleepy, but it is part of the job. And I'm fortunate enough to be around some people that do hold me accountable and let me know when the attitude's not there, and it's that makes a big difference for me. Um, my next thing is because I'm curious. You spent a long time as a tailboard, and you've now promoted into a company officer level, and I'm just kind of curious, like, what are your expectations of the guys riding the jump seat on your crew?
Yeah. So this is going to surprise a lot of people. It's probably going to surprise a ton of people. I literally have three words. This is all I expect. Anybody that rides for me, like, and I think my guys would tell you this. This is all I expect, and it's just three simple words. And there's probably some people out there right now guessing, like, I already know what these words are. I need you to do your job. Those are my expectations. Everything is laid out for you when you join the fire service. I do not babysit. If you are new and you're a rookie and you're out of the academy, we have a red book you have to complete. I got to walk you through stuff. I'll
Mm-hmm.
babysit new people because they're new. I'm not babysitting my entire crew. If we need training, we will train. If we need to do something, we'll do something. If I see a deficit we need to work on, we'll work on it. I need you to get on the truck and I need you to do your job. If the house is on fire, it's not rocket science, right? We're going to pull off a hose line. Hopefully, you've pulled a hose line off, whether it's in training or at a fire recently. And we're going to go into the building. We're going to find the seat of the fire and we're going to put water on it. And if everything goes well, because aggressive fire attack, aggressive engine company, so goes the first company, so goes the fire, it's going to go out pretty quick. We'll go chest bump in the front yard. We'll take the crew photo. We'll go back and we'll be done. I really, honestly, my expectations are super simple. Just when you come to work, do your job. It's already laid out for you. It's already laid out. Do I have stuff I ask my guys to do every day? Yeah, there's station stuff like, hey guys, we clean in the mornings. We don't work out till after lunch. There's station things that we do or station expectations that the captain has for us. And then I kind of, it's not my station. So whatever the captain has, I kind of relay that stuff. Or, he may say, hey, Josh, you got it for the day, whatever. But it's so simple. Just get on the truck and do what you're supposed to do. If you're riding in the back, and I tell guys that, if I have a fill-in guy or overtime guy, I'm like, hey, this is how I run the truck. You do this, you do this. And I'm like, and if all goes as planned, this is how it will work. But we all know how that goes. I always tell them it probably won't go as planned, and it's all going to go to hell in a handbasket, but we'll figure that shit out anyway because that's literally what we do. But
Mm-hmm.
it's so simple. I don't expect anybody to do anything I didn't do as a fireman. I got on the truck every day. Not every day was a good day. Not every day was a great day in my personal life. That's what sick leave is for. If you are not 100%, don't come to work. And I, we got the sick leave abusers out there and whatever. But if you're not 100% and, you don't feel like you could go in the building, drag the hose line, rescue the person, you just shouldn't be there because you're putting everybody else in danger. And if you
Right.
got some personal stuff going on and you can't be mentally focused, that's fine. Don't come to work. But, I have simple tasks on the engine. I have a driver. So we show up to fire, he's gonna do driving things, but I make sure he's competent. I know he knows how to get water on the line and, do changeover from the hydrant. And I have him do certain things where if we're inside with the first line, we know another company's coming. We know we need a backup line. As long as everything's done, I have him pull a backup line. I have him throw a ladder. Like it's just simple things. And I'm like, guys, this is not our job is not hard. It's hard in the sense where you got 80 pounds of gear and it's on
Mm-hmm.
fire. But if you love it, that's what you sign up to do and you train hard for it, you just kind of do it. And I mean, I know that sounds weird. And to me, if you're prepared, you just do it. Like it should be like a well-oiled machine. And like I think the more training you do, the better. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not out there out back every single day pumping the truck with these guys. We do train. But sometimes it is tabletop, That's not our only training because I hate that. I've been not a proponent of only tabletop training my whole career. Like we could talk about stuff, but we're gonna go do it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like if it's 30 degrees and raining, I'm probably not going to put you outside, do ladder training. We'll probably talk inside. I'm not a complete jerk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's simple. Just get on the truck. This is your riding position. This is what I need you to do today. Other than that, if you're not a rookie, you're not new, there's certain stuff you're supposed to do. I mean, I've had guys look at me and say, hey, I'm not doing that today. Like, okay, well, what do you want me to do? Like, this is what you signed up to do, so you're telling me you're not doing it. Like what's the next step? I'm curious why you're telling me that. Now, these weren't my guys. It'd be like a fill-in guy. Like we did some training one time. Everybody's had a service and it wasn't anything hard. I surprised the guys. I was like, hey, we're gonna go on an SCBA walk, full gear, air, grab a tool. We're gonna climb up steps, go across, come down. Whenever you run out of air, you're done. Like it's a walk.
Mm-hmm.
Like when was the last time we burned through a bottle? It's been a couple of months. I had a fill-in guy look at me and said, I didn't come over here to train today. I said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, cool. And he just stared at me. I kept putting my stuff on. He's like, "So what do you want me to do?" I was like, "Well, you already know what the expectation is. So if you're telling me you're not going to, you're not even my guy. I mean, whatever." And he was
Yeah.
like, "Well, I'll be safety." Or I'm like, "Well, I'm getting ready for my drill. Like, I'm not. This guy had some time in. Like, I wasn't expecting him to train. I kind of expected this anyway. But it's kind of like what you said. What does that say to all the other people?
Yeah.
But the expectation. It's not hard. If you don't want to do it, leave. And I say that I say that in the nicest, not nicest way. If
Yeah.
you hate this job, like, look, if I did not like a job and I hated going to work every single day, I would find a new job. So the people that are in the fire department and hate the fire department and hang around, I don't understand it. Like, just go find a new job. Go be happy somewhere instead of coming in here miserable, risking my life, risking your life, risking the lives of the citizens you claim to want to serve. Just go work somebody else and go work. It's okay. Go leave and be happy and go work at Marshall's or TJ Maxx or Starbucks is always hiring. I mean, you go work anywhere.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
something I try to tell some of the new guys is like, just remember this. Like, if you're ever in that error, that headspace, is like, just remember, like, we didn't call you and ask you to come work here. Like,
100%.
no one called me and been like, "Hey, John, do you want to come work for the fire department?" Like, no one did. You chose, and not only did you choose, but you prepared, hopefully, and you trained, and you did the physical agility. You passed a written test. You went and did a background. Like, you jumped through hoops, and some of them are kind of dumb. Like, some of the hoops you jumped through were dumb, and you did that willingly to come and work here. So the next time you don't want to push a broom or you don't want to go train, like you said, I don't personally get that either. The people that show up to work and just are miserable the whole time. Like, there are other jobs out there that are way less stressful, that you can be home every single night, that
And
you get
probably
to
make
tuck
more
your
money.
kids, yeah,
Yeah.
and make way more money. Like, there's other things that you could do that would suit you a lot better than showing up to work here and just making everyone else around you miserable. So yeah, that part kind of got me fired up a little bit. I was sitting there
Yeah, I
thinking
mean, I got
about
a
that.
buddy that just got hired with like a home reno company. He makes what I make as a lieutenant. He just started. Like
Yeah.
he's got a little bit of experience in the industry. Great guy. I mean, I would have hired him, for anything. I'm biased, good friend of mine, but he makes what I make. He just started. I've been in the fire department 19 years,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I've definitely never been in this for money. Because you just don't make it, which is why, 80% of firemen have second jobs or do
Yeah.
something on the side, but yeah, I've never got the look. If you're at 3 to 5 years and it's time to find something else, that's cool. Go find something else. Don't stay till 10 years and be miserable. Like, if you're not going to stay 30, I don't think we're going to see that anymore anyway. I think we're in the era like the 3 to 6 year, 3 to 7 year firemen, to
Mm-hmm.
where they're coming in and they're like, this is cool, this is fun. They're going to do their job while they're here, but they're just not, I always, there's really good employees and then there's firefighters. And I don't have an issue with a really good employee. He comes to work, he does his job every day, there's a fire, he does what he's supposed to. He just doesn't have that, this is what I wanted to do my whole life. This is my calling. This is, but I have nothing wrong with good employees. Like, I've worked with some really good people who are like, hey, I'm going to do 3 or 4 years and I'm out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but okay, at the end of this 3 and 4 years, if you're miserable and you're just staying just because it's a job and you hate it, like, I
Yeah.
don't know, man, just go. I don't want to be miserable. And everybody has their days where they go to work and they're like, oh man, I want to do something else. Or, I have been doing this 19 years. So I'm like, I'm not close, but I'm not 7 years, I'm done. So I think 6 years, 6 years, I'm done if I want to be,
Yeah.
so it's like, I'm not in the beginning of my career. I'm more towards the tail end of it. So there are days where I'm like, oh man, what would I do when I get out of here? But then I I like going to work. Like, I like
Mm-hmm.
my station. I like riding the truck. I like the guys. I'm spoiled. Every time I talk on these podcasts or talk to people, like, I'm spoiled right now. I have a pretty good crew. So I actually like going to work. I'm on
Right. Yeah.
vacation right now. I've been on vacation the last 2.5 weeks. I got another week and a half off. I mean, it's been freaking awesome, but I still text my guys, they text me. We had a Christmas party last week all together. I'm spoiled right now, but I'll be
Right.
honest, I can look back over the course of my career. I would say I've never had a bad crew, but then I also look back and think about was that just my perspective the whole time because I love my job and maybe I had a bad crew? Or
Hmm.
did I just go to work and make an effort every single day? But I've never gone to work and had a terrible crew and thought, man, I can't stand these guys. I've been pretty lucky for the most part. The large majority of the crew was there for the right reasons, wanted to help people, wanted to do their job. You get, a guy or a girl every now and then, like, hey, who's this guy? Who's this girl? But I've been lucky. But then, my wife was like, is it really lucky or has your perspective been this is what you want to do, so you've made the best at everything? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe a little bit of both, you know.
Sure, sure.
But,
I'm also blessed. My crew's pretty awesome, surrounded by some guys that do love their job and both aspects of it, and they like to get after it. So I totally get that part. So you do have a full-time crew though most of the time, like aside from people taking vacation and stuff. Cool.
mm.
Do you do any type of like leadership development with you guys that are underneath you? I'm just curious because I think one of the biggest problems, if you will, or issues is that a lot of guys that are in that jump seat, they don't have a lot of knowledge, or maybe they do and don't practice it very well of leadership. And I know people say like there's no such thing as a bad crew, just bad leaders, or whatever, insert whatever quote
Sure.
you want to. But I had this conversation the other day, and I personally believe that a strong informal leader will make that officer look amazing, right? Because I
Yeah.
think that's our job, is whether they're good or they're bad, like to make them be better than what they are. And so, one of the jobs as a formal leader, at least in my opinion, is to empower those underneath them and get them ready to lead their own crew. Do you do any type of like leadership development with them, knowing that you're big into leadership?
So I don't do any kind of like formal, hey guys, here's a book, sit down, I'm going to run you through a PowerPoint, here's a class, let's talk about what leadership is, what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I am big on relationships. I'm really big on relationships. When I got promoted, I thought, okay, what do I want to focus on as an officer? If I had to pick one thing, what would it be? And I was like, I feel like I have a good foundation of what the job entails as far as, I'm still a working officer. I'm going to go into my crew, do the job. I've built a good foundation over the years. What's something I want to focus on as an officer? And for me, that was individual relationships in the station and getting to know everybody on their crew. So like you use the word empowerment. So no, like no, I don't do any kind of formal, hey guys, let's gather in the office. What is
Yeah.
leadership? Um, Hands down, I do sit down with guys every single day at work on an individual basis and talk about where they're at in their career. What do they want to do? And maybe sitting at I got to mention my buddy Les up in Canada. He wrote a book called Coffee Cup Leadership. And, maybe it's sitting around the table just drinking a cup of coffee, talking to my operator about like, hey, what does he think about this? Or how can we handle this person? Or hey, can you take care of this? I got a lot of guys that came in when I came in, but so got the same amount of time in, but I am their, supervisor. But we're all adults. So it's kind of nice. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I say I'm spoiled, I'm kind of spoiled. So
Mm-hmm.
I would the type of training that I do is more, I would say, individual empowerment through relationship, where I'll sit down with an individual, maybe a group of two or three people, and I'll look around and I'll be like, okay, this is actually an opportunity to instill something in these two people that are in this room right now. So let me pick their brains. Let me see where they're at. Let me see if they want to take a promotion one day. How can I help them? Like we have a promotional process going on right now to where I'm supposed to be studying for captain, but I'm on vacation, so I'm not gonna lie. Cracked this book like twice. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but I'm supposed to be studying for captain and but a lot of my guys are studying to make lieutenant. So I make sure they have access to everything I have access to. If I've created some kind of study sheet, I get it to them. If I found some material I think can help, I get it to them. Like, how can I help you? Like, how can I help you become the leader that you want to become? Like, what can I do to get you there?
Mm-hmm.
We have like formal stuff that the city requires where, we do an eval once a year. We do like a mid-year eval that we're supposed to do. Not everybody does those. It's not, the city's trying to get better about it. And but I do have those conversations with my guys individually. And, there are plenty of opportunities to teach leadership without formal leadership training. And I think one of the biggest things is example. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
example what it looks like to be a leader for your crew. And I realize every single day when I go to work, they're watching me. They are watching
Mm-hmm.
me. These guys are watching me, whether I like it, every single day. And I feel blessed. I have a good crew, but anybody that is going to work and thinks that your crew is not talking about you, you're wrong. I don't care how great of a leader you think you are, how much effort you put into your job. Your crew is still talking about you and maybe an aspect of something they do or don't like. So my thing is to just curb the conversation. I know they're going to talk about me when I walk out of the room, whether I do good or bad, because that's firemen. That's just the way that it is. So for me, I'm like, I just try and keep the conversation to a minimum, or I just give them things to talk about. I make mistakes every single day, and I tell them all the time. I'm like, hey guys, so I'm cool with making mistakes. I'm not perfect. I don't even care if you guys talk about behind my back. Just don't expect anything to get fixed. It's not going to happen. You talk behind my back all day. It doesn't bother me. I know it's happening, and I don't ever get any like, no, LT, no, it's not, because that's the fire department,
Yeah.
but nothing will ever get fixed. But formal, we have stuff that we do as a city. For me, it's more informal. Like I said, I am all about relationships and empowerment through relationship. And it's easier for me to connect with somebody over coffee at the galley table or at the picnic table or front bumper, tailboard in the gym. Like I know everybody on my crew, I know their wives' names. I know their wives' names. If they come to a party, I make sure to say hello to their wife. I know their kids' names. I don't know everybody's kids' names. I know some of their kids' names. Some of these guys have a lot of kids, but I could at least tell you that they have kids. I could tell you if
Right.
their kids play sports or don't play sports. I could tell you if their kids had a soccer game this weekend, if it's changed seasons, if they're playing football, if did their kid good, how they doing the school play this week. So leadership training for me isn't so much like, and now I've done stuff where like, hey guys, they all know I write books and I travel and speak and do all
Mhm.
that, but I don't go to work and I'm like, guys, have you read Jump Seat Leadership? Like, you should read
Right.
I have
Yeah.
it. If they want it, they can grab it. I never push it. Usually if I write something, I'll give it to them first because I want some honest feedback. And if you want some honest feedback, find a group of firemen. They'll be really honest. So
Yeah.
like before I release Engage the Enemy, I just was like, hey, I want to make sure this isn't like over the top religious because I don't feel like it is. I was like,
Hmm.
it's got some faith stuff in it, but I was like, would this be attractive for firemen? So I just gave it to them and they read it. And a couple of the guys were like, hey, I did this pretty good. And I'm like, would you expect it to be bad? They were like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, formal
Yeah.
stuff is like, no, man, I'm probably more of an informal leadership training kind of person. I lead through example. I want these guys to see what it looks like.
Hmm.
Now there is stuff where I'll sit people down. I'm like, hey, dude, you can't like if you want to move up, you can't do that later.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know, it's that kind of stuff.
I like that. I didn't really put much thought to the informal side of it because now that you say that, it makes so much sense. We already have, department mandated stuff, city
Yeah.
mandated stuff. And so keeping things pretty informal to where it's not like, hey, you have to do this or whatever. I do like that. And like you said, relationships, they definitely are huge. But I want to go back and talk a little bit about what you said because it put a thought in my head and it was one of the questions that I have written down. I don't know if it was COVID or whatever, but I feel like during about that time period, we had a large influx of like 10 to 15 or exodus, if you will, of 10 to 15-year guys. What me would consider a senior guy
Right.
would just kind of left the fire service, for this reason or this reason or whatever. Now it's kind of putting guys into the role that have been, that are a little bit less tenured, that are younger, that it's almost forcing them to step into the mentor role or the leadership, informal leader role. What advice would you give to someone that is less tenured and having to step into that mentor role to these newer guys?
Yeah. Well, at first I think you have to want to step into it, right? I think sliding into it and not wanting to do it, like don't do it. Like I would rather you just not do it. Like if you realize you're in that position and you're like, okay, this is something that didn't expect, but I realize that I'm here. Don't be intimidated by the people because there are still going to be the guys that still have the 10 and 15. They're just speckled around, right?
Mm,
Don't be intimidated by the guys that are just around. If anything, those guys should be helping you. And I think what happens is, and I've done this before, like you get somebody come in, they got like 4 years in, you got like 10 years in, they're making you look bad. They got 4 years in, but they're motivated, they're training, they're reading the books, they're going to the conferences, they're bringing back new stuff, they're training the crew. and you've just become a little bit stale. So now that guy almost becomes like a threat, right? And he as like so seniority is not what it used to be either. Back in the day, I would say seniority was more respected than it was today than it is today. But also, I think seniority is changing. Back in the day, the senior guys were pretty active. They were doing the things, they were going to the fires, they were teaching the new guys. This is the example that I had. When I saw senior guys, I was like, I want to be this guy. Like, he's still active. He's not sitting in a recliner, flipping through the channel. And I think now a lot of the people talk about seniority as far as time. And for me, I'm like, seniority it's so much more than just time in the fire department. We're talking about the fire department. So you might find yourself in that position when you're like, I'm 7 years in, but I'm the senior guy at my station. So you have to embrace it. I mean, it's not something where you meet with the crew and say, "Look, listen, I'm the informal leader up in here." If that I like if you do that, I do want you to email me because I want you to know. I want to know how it went. But I can't imagine it going well. But no, seriously, it's I think you do have to embrace it. I think if you're in that position, you got to embrace it. And you got to be willing to understand the fact that you're going to be watched by everybody. The minute you step up and lead at all, whatever the situation is, especially in that kind of situation, you're going to get a who does he think he is out of somebody.
Right.
It's going to happen, but embrace it. I would say that you have to want to do it. It's not an easy spot to be in. And, talk to guys that have been in that position before you. Like, hey, I realize I'm in this position. I actually want to be successful at it. And I think the biggest thing that you can do is say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm
Mhm.
doing. I don't really know how to do this. I know my crew's looking to me right now, but I've never done this before. So find that 10 or 15, 20-year guy who's still in the fire department, or he doesn't have to be in the fire department, and reach out and say, hey, look, I've had people reach out to me through Messenger like, hey, I'm 5 years. All these guys got 2 years on the job. Like, I'm the guy they're looking to, but I don't feel like I have a lot of time in. I'm like, well, the fact is you don't, but there's nobody else. So who's going to do it? So it's really about embracing it, number one, which probably isn't going to be easy because you don't feel tenured. And then I think realizing that, hey, I've never been here before. And for me, if I've never been anywhere before, the first thing I want to do is get knowledge and finding the knowledge, follow, it's so easy to get knowledge, podcasts, books, um, I would say embrace it, find the knowledge. Mentorship is huge. Get a mentor. Like get somebody who you can go to and bounce stuff off of. So when the guys come to you, you can come back to them and just look like a genius, Like you
Yeah.
don't have to
Yeah.
know it every time. And I think one of the biggest things, if you're in that position, it's okay to say, I don't know. I would love when people tell me they don't know because now I have a starting point. But if you tell me you know and then you screw it up, I'm like, well, now it looks weird. So did you lie to me? Or could you not figure what are we doing? But if you tell me I don't know, okay. Depending on our relationship, I might laugh at you. If we don't have a relationship, I'm probably not gonna laugh at you. I'll just show you. But if
Yeah.
we've been together for a few years, you tell me you don't know and you should have known, you might get some shit from a couple of guys before you help you. But that's the fire department. That's the way it is,
Right. Right. I think informal or formal, like having the humility just to admit that you don't know what you're doing, and then
Yeah.
just saying like, "Hey, but I know a guy that can help in this situation," and just
Yep.
reaching out, like being vulnerable, like that just makes you human, and it really does grow the relationship part of it more. Is just knowing like, hey, this guy, Cat, whatever, like he doesn't know everything, and neither do I, and he makes mistakes, and so do I. Like it kind of takes away the whole. Him being above me, it kind of puts you on the same level where you should
Yep.
be, if that makes
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect
Uh,
sense.
well, Josh, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we've been going for well over an hour at this point, and leadership is something that I could talk about for
Oh, I hear
hours.
you.
So,
Yeah, same thing.
real quick, if anyone wanted to get a hold of you or purchase a book or reach out, where would they do that at?
Yeah, so I run a website. It's called the Chase Collective, the Chase Collective LLC.com. Literally, you can get to all my stuff from there. And then all the books are available on Amazon. They're available on the Chase Collective LLC.com. You can buy all the books on Amazon. It'll be at your house in 2 days. Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly, running specials on social media, just trying to get the message out. I'm on it all the time, way more than I want to be. And so you can follow Jump Seat Leadership on Facebook, send me a message on Messenger, shoot me an email. I mean, the multiple ways to get a hold of me. It may take me a day, but I usually respond to pretty much everybody that reaches out. And yeah, man, it's just been cool to see, like, the response from the books, especially the latest book, The Engage the Enemy. We got a lot of guys in the fire department that their identity is solely the fire department. And what would happen today if you got injured or somebody took that away? Now you have no idea who you are and you're lost. And if you're married, then your wife and your kids are lost. And, the Engage the Enemy is a real personal book about stuff that I went through. And honestly, as a fireman and a military vet, you don't have to go through that stuff if you don't want to. It's a real and raw perspective. So I just want to put that out there. Like, guys, you're struggling with something and you just need some encouragement or maybe just a roadmap. It's a great book to pick up. You can get that at the website. That's available on Amazon. But yeah, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. So the Jump Seat Leadership Facebook is probably the easiest way, but you can find me if you want to. I don't hide very well, not anymore.
And you're going to be at firemanship, right?
I will, yeah. So I'll be at Firemanship in July, which was a great opportunity. From Cody reached out of nowhere, and so I'll be doing the Jump Seat Leadership class, and I'll be doing the Engage the Enemy class for I think the first time. And so I'll
Man,
be doing the Jump Seat Leadership class. I'll be doing the Engage the Enemy class for 2 days straight, and I'll be doing a like an interview session at I think one of the nights with John Sparrow where we sit down and we kind of talk about personal story, where I've been, what God's done in my life. It'll be a real and raw talk about,
yeah,
hey, it'll be Engage the Enemy on steroids. So I'm
yeah,
stoked. They're doing something that, I mean, who offers like a free conference
yeah.
and then it gets sold out registrations and it's insane what they're doing. I'm glad you brought that up. But yeah, I will be at Firemanship this year and I am super stoked about that. But
Cool,
yeah,
man. Well, once again, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, man. I've enjoyed this conversation. You can tell you're passionate about leadership and you're real, and you show some vulnerability with your book. And like I just said, I think that is one of the real big principles of a leader. And I have them all right here, the ones that I ordered: Jump Seat Leadership, Engage the Enemy.
love it.
Take it from me if you don't want to listen to the guy that wrote the book. Both of these, I think, are going to be invaluable in my life. And like I said, I already know I'm going to start passing around the Engage the Enemy book to some of the people that I know for a fact would benefit from it. But once again, guys, thank you for tuning in to the Tailboard Misfits podcast. Don't forget to like and share the crap out of this stuff because we just kind of want to reach as many people as we can. Once again, thank you.